Caleb Harrison hadn't cried in 8 years, not since he buried his wife and baby girl in the cold Texas dirt. But when he pulled that burlap sack from Miller's Creek and a tiny frozen hand grabbed his finger, when those blue lips parted and whispered, "Mama," he fell to his knees in the icy water and wept like the day he lost everything. If you want to know how this abandoned baby changed a broken cowboy's life forever, subscribe to our channel and stay until the end. Comment your city below so I can see how far this story travels. The winter of 1887 hit Silver Creek, Texas, harder than any old-timer could remember. Caleb Harrison rode his horse along the frozen fence line, his breath forming clouds in the bitter December air. At 43 years old, he'd been riding this same path for 8 years now. Every morning, every evening. Alone. Thunder, his buckskin gelding, snorted and pulled against the reins. "Easy, boy." Caleb patted the horse's neck. "Just another mile and we'll head back." But Thunder wouldn't settle. The horse's ears flicked forward then back. His hooves danced on the frozen ground. "What's gotten into you?" Then Caleb heard it, a sound so faint it could have been the wind. A cry, weak, desperate, coming from the creek. He kicked Thunder into motion and rode hard toward Miller's Creek. The water was low this time of year, half frozen along the edges, and there caught against a fallen branch was a burlap sack, the kind used for feed corn. It was moving. Caleb was off his horse before Thunder fully stopped. The icy water soaked through his boots as he waited, in his heart pounding against his ribs. He'd seen a lot in his years as a Texas Ranger. Dead men, dying men, things that haunted his sleep for decades. But nothing prepared him for what he found inside that sack. A baby. A little girl, maybe 8 or 9 months old. Her lips were blue. Her skin was gray. Her tiny body shook with cold so violent that Caleb thought she might already be gone. "Dear God!" The words tore from his throat. The baby's eyes fluttered open. They were blue, pale blue, like winter sky. She looked up at Caleb's weathered face, and her cracked lips moved. "Mama." Caleb's hands shook as he lifted her from the sack. She weighed almost nothing. Her dress was soaked through thin cotton that offered no protection against the December cold. Someone had put this child in a feed sack and thrown her in the creek to die. "Hold on, little one," his voice cracked. "You hold on." He pressed her against his chest inside his coat, trying to share whatever warmth his body could give. She was so cold. Too cold. Her breathing was shallow, barely there. Thunder stood steady as Caleb mounted with one hand, the other keeping the baby pressed tight against him. He'd ridden fast before, chasing outlaws escaping ambushes, but he'd never ridden like this. Like death itself was chasing them both. The town was 3 miles away. 3 miles of frozen ground and bitter wind. Caleb bent low over Thunder's neck and whispered prayers he hadn't spoken in 8 years. "Don't you die on me. You hear me. Don't you dare die." The baby's tiny fist gripped his shirt, holding on, fighting. And something in Caleb's chest, something he thought had died with his own daughter, began to crack open. Dr. Thomas Whitfield was finishing his morning coffee when his door burst open so hard it nearly came off the hinges. Caleb Harrison stood there, wild-eyed and desperate, clutching something inside his coat. "Doc, I need help, now." Thomas had known Caleb for years. The man was steady as stone, never raised his voice, never showed fear. But right now, the former Texas Ranger looked like a man watching his world end. "What happened?" Caleb opened his coat and Thomas felt his stomach drop. "Found her in the creek. Someone tied her in a sack. She's barely breathing." Thomas swept everything off his examination table with one arm. "Put her down. Careful now." The baby whimpered as Caleb laid her on the table. Her eyes opened again, searching, confused. When she saw Caleb step back, she reached for him with trembling hands. "Mama," she whispered again. "I'm here." Caleb grabbed her tiny hand. "I'm right here." Thomas worked fast. He'd delivered babies in blizzards, treated gunshot wounds on dusty roads, saved men who should have died a dozen times over. But this child, this poor abandoned creature, she was barely hanging on. She's hypothermic. Body temperature's dangerously low. He wrapped her in warmed blankets, checking her pulse, her breathing. How long was she in that water? Don't know. Could have been minutes. Could have been hours. It's a miracle she's alive at all. Caleb stared at the baby's face, her matted blonde hair, her blue eyes that kept finding him in the room. Who does this doc? What kind of monster throws a baby away like garbage? Thomas shook his head. I've seen a lot of evil in my years, Caleb. But this... He couldn't finish. The baby's breathing was getting stronger now that she was warming up, but she refused to let go of Caleb's finger. Every time he tried to pull away, she'd cry weak, heartbreaking cries that cut right through him. She needs constant care, feeding every 2 hours, someone watching her around the clock. Thomas looked at Caleb with concern. You can't do this alone. I ain't leaving her. I'm not asking you to, but you need help, someone who knows how to care for infants. The door opened again, and Eleanor McBride stepped inside. She'd been walking past when she heard the commotion. The whole town probably heard Caleb's horse racing down Main Street. Dr. Whitfield is everything. She stopped. Her eyes found the baby on the table, and all the color drained from her face. Oh my God! Ellie hadn't held a baby in 4 years. Not since her son Samuel died in her arms at 6 months old, 3 weeks after she buried her husband William. She'd sworn she would never hold another child again. The pain was too much, the risk was too great. But when that baby looked at her, when those pale blue eyes met hers, something shifted in Ellie's chest. What happened to her? Her voice came out as a whisper. Someone left her to die. Caleb's voice was rough with anger. Creek's freezing. She was in a feed sack. Ellie moved closer without meaning to. The baby was watching her now, those eyes tracking her every movement. Ellie, Thomas spoke gently, I need your help. This child needs round-the-clock care. I can't do it alone, and Caleb... I can handle it, Caleb interrupted. You haven't slept in 3 days. I can see it in your face. Thomas turned back to Ellie. You're the only woman in this town I trust with something this delicate. Will you help? Ellie's hands trembled. Every instinct told her to run, to protect her heart from breaking again. But the baby reached out toward her, one tiny hand stretching through the air, and made a soft cooing sound. Please, the gesture seemed to say. Please don't leave me. I'll help. The words came out before Ellie could stop them. Thomas placed the baby in her arms, and something magical happened. The child who had been restless and whimpering immediately calmed. Her tiny fingers wrapped around a strand of Ellie's auburn hair, and she sighed a soft, contented sound that broke Ellie's heart in the best possible way. She likes you, Caleb said quietly. Ellie couldn't speak. Tears were streaming down her face, and she didn't even try to wipe them away. They set up in the back room of Dr. Whitfield's office. It wasn't much: a small bed, a rocking chair, a stove to keep the room warm, but it was enough. Caleb refused to leave sleeping in a chair by the door when exhaustion finally claimed him. The first night was the hardest. The baby woke every hour crying for food, for warmth, for comfort. Ellie and Caleb took turns stumbling through the darkness, learning as they went. You're holding the bottle wrong. Ellie adjusted Caleb's grip. Tilt it up a little. She'll swallow less air. Caleb followed her instructions, watching in wonder as the baby drank. She's strong. Look at her go. She's a fighter. Had to be. To survive what someone did to her. They didn't talk much those first days. Just worked side by side, focused on keeping this tiny life alive. But something was building between them, a connection forged in sleepless nights and shared purpose. On the third morning, the baby smiled. It was just a small upturn of her lips, but it transformed her whole face. She was looking at Ellie, reaching up to touch her cheek when the smile appeared. Did you see that? Ellie's voice caught. She smiled. Caleb moved closer, and the baby turned to look at him too. Her smile widened, and she made a babbling sound that might have been laughter. "She needs a name," Ellie said softly. "We can't keep calling her the baby." Caleb studied the child's face. She should have died in that creek. Any other baby would have. But she held on. She fought. "Grace," Ellie whispered. "It's a miracle she's alive. Grace of God." Caleb nodded slowly. "Grace. I like that." The baby Grace seemed to respond to the name. She turned her head when they called her, babbled happily when she heard it. "Grace it is," Caleb said. And for the first time in 8 years, he smiled. Sheriff Jacob Turner arrived on the 4th day with news that made Caleb's blood run cold. "Someone's been asking about a missing baby." Jacob stood in the doorway, hat in hands, looking uncomfortable. "Offering money for information." Ellie pulled Grace closer. "Who?" "Don't know for sure. But Mayor Prescott's assistant came by my office yesterday. Said it was a family matter that needed to be handled quietly." The mention of Prescott's name made Caleb's jaw tighten. Judge Henry Prescott wasn't just the mayor, he was the richest, most powerful man in 3 counties. He owned the bank, the largest ranch, and half the businesses in town. When Prescott wanted something, he got it. "What'd you tell him?" Caleb asked. "Told him I hadn't heard anything about a missing baby." Jacob shrugged. "Wasn't lying. Grace wasn't missing. She was abandoned." "They're not getting her back." Ellie's voice was fierce. "Whoever threw her in that creek, they're not touching her again." Caleb put a hand on her shoulder. "Easy. We don't know what we're dealing with yet." "I know enough. Someone tried to kill this child, and now they're looking for her because they're scared." Ellie looked down at Grace, who was sleeping peacefully in her arms. "They should be scared." Jacob cleared his throat. "There's something else. You two, living here together, taking care of this baby. Folks are starting to talk." "Let them talk," Caleb said. "I'm just saying, you know how this town is. An unmarried man and woman raising a child together, it ain't proper. Some people think it's sweet. Others—" He trailed off. Ellie lifted her chin. "Others can mind their own business." "I agree with you, ma'am. But if Prescott gets involved, he'll use every weapon he's got, including your reputation." After Jacob left, Caleb and Ellie sat in heavy silence. Grace slept between them, unaware that her future hung in the balance. "He's right," Ellie finally said. "This town loves to gossip, and Prescott loves to use gossip against people. I don't care what people say about me." "Neither do I. But Grace," Ellie stroked the baby's soft hair, "if they use our improper arrangement to take her away—" "They won't." Caleb's voice was firm. "I won't let them." Ellie looked at him, really looked at him for the first time since they'd started this journey together. His face was weathered, lined with years of hard living and harder losses, but his eyes were kind. And when he looked at Grace, she saw something she recognized. The fierce, protective love of a parent who'd lost everything. "Why?" she asked quietly. "Why do you care so much? You barely know her." Caleb was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was rough with old pain. "I had a daughter once, Lily. She was 3 years old when she died. Fever took her and my wife Sarah in the same week." He swallowed hard. "I wasn't there. I was out chasing outlaws, being a Texas Ranger, thinking I was doing something important. By the time I got home, they were already in the ground." "Caleb, I've spent 8 years blaming myself, building walls, keeping everyone out because I couldn't stand to lose anyone else." He looked at Grace and his eyes glistened. "But when I pulled her from that creek, when she grabbed my finger and called me Mama, something broke open inside me, something I thought was dead." Ellie reached across and took his hand. "I understand. I know you do." He met her eyes. Doc told me about your husband, your son. Ellie nodded, not trusting her voice. We're both broken, aren't we? Caleb said softly, both carrying grief too heavy to put down. Maybe. Ellie squeezed his hand. But maybe Grace didn't come to us by accident. Maybe we're exactly what she needs. And maybe... She hesitated. Maybe she's exactly what we need too. Grace stirred in her sleep, making a soft sound. Both adults turned to look at her, and in that moment, something unspoken passed between them. Whatever came next, whoever was looking for this baby, they would face it together. Rosa Mendez arrived at Dr. Whitfield's office on the 5th day, her dark eyes darting nervously as she slipped through the door. Mrs. Mendez. Ellie recognized the woman. Rosa had been working for the Prescott family for 15 years. What are you doing here? Please. Rosa's voice was barely a whisper. I must speak with you. Both of you. It's about the baby. Caleb moved closer, his hand instinctively moving to the gun at his hip. What do you know? Rosa wrung her hands, tears already forming in her eyes. I know who she is. I know who put her in that creek. And God forgive me, I can't stay silent anymore. Sit down. Ellie guided her to a chair. Tell us everything. Rosa took a shaky breath. The baby, she belongs to Miss Charlotte, Judge Prescott's daughter. The room went still. Charlotte Prescott was 19 years old, the judge's only child, his pride and joy. She'd been sent away 6 months ago to visit relatives back east. No one had seen her since. Charlotte had a baby. Ellie's voice was barely audible. Rosa nodded miserably. She fell in love with a young man, a ranch hand named Daniel. When the judge found out about the baby, he was furious. Said it would ruin the family name. A baby with no husband, no proper marriage, the scandal would destroy them. So he sent her away, Caleb said flatly. Yes. And when the baby came, Rosa broke down sobbing. He told Charlotte the baby died. Complications, he said. The child didn't survive. Miss Charlotte, she cried for weeks, months. She still cries. She thinks her baby is dead. Ellie felt sick. But the baby didn't die. No. The judge, he paid a man to take care of it. To make the problem disappear. Rosa looked at Grace sleeping peacefully in her basket. I heard them talking. The judge and this man. They said the baby would be better off dead than growing up with the shame. Caleb's hands clenched into fists. Who did he pay? His name is Hank Miller. He works at the stables sometimes. He's weak, drinks too much. But he's not a bad man, just desperate for money. Rosa wiped her eyes. He was supposed to kill her. But he couldn't do it. So he put her in the creek and told himself the cold would do it instead. That way it wouldn't be murder. The room fell silent, except for Rosa's quiet sobs. Grace slept on innocent and unaware that her own grandfather had ordered her death. Does Charlotte know? Ellie finally asked. Does she know her baby is alive? Rosa shook her head. She believes the lie. She grieves every day for the child she thinks she lost. We have to tell her. No. Rosa grabbed Ellie's arm. If the judge finds out I told you, if he knows the baby survived, he'll do anything to protect his secret. Anything. Caleb stepped forward. Then we need to be ready. You don't understand. Rosa's voice shook with fear. Judge Prescott owns this town. The sheriff owes him money. The other judge owes him favors. Even Dr. Whitfield depends on his business. If Prescott wants that baby, he'll get her. And anyone who stands in his way will deal with me. Caleb's voice was ice. I've faced worse than corrupt judges. You were a Texas Ranger. Rosa looked at him with desperate hope. That's why I came to you. You're the only one in this town who might be able to stop him. Grace woke then, fussing softly. Ellie lifted her and the baby immediately calmed, snuggling against her shoulder. She's so beautiful, Rosa whispered, reaching out to touch Grace's soft hair. She looks like her mother. Same eyes, same smile. We won't let him take her. Ellie's voice was steady, but her heart was racing. I don't care how powerful he is. Rosa stood to leave, glancing nervously at the door. Be careful. The judge has eyes everywhere, and he's already suspicious. Mrs. Mendez. Caleb stopped her. Why risk everything to tell us the truth? Rosa's eyes filled with fresh tears. Because I have grandchildren, and every night I dream about that baby in the sack. I hear her crying. I can't live with this guilt anymore. She crossed herself. God will judge me for staying silent this long, but at least now I've done something right. After she left, Caleb and Ellie stood together looking down at Grace. He's going to come for her, Ellie said quietly. Let him come. Caleb, be realistic. He has money, power, connections. What do we have? Caleb looked at her, really looked at her, and something fierce burned in his gray eyes. We have each other. We have the truth. And we have something Prescott will never understand. What's that? Love. He reached down and let Grace wrap her tiny hand around his finger. We love this child, and I'd die before I let anyone hurt her again. Ellie felt tears pricking her eyes, not from fear, not from grief, but from something she hadn't felt in 4 years. Hope. Then we fight, she said. Caleb nodded. Then we fight. Grace looked up at them both, her blue eyes bright and trusting. She didn't know the danger she was in. She only knew that these two people, this broken cowboy and this grieving schoolteacher, made her feel safe. She reached for Ellie's face, patting her cheek with a clumsy hand. Mama, she said clearly. Then she turned to Caleb, grabbing his weathered finger. Papa. And in that moment, as the winter wind howled outside and danger circled closer, the three of them became something none of them had expected. A family. The news spread through Silver Creek like wildfire. By the end of the week, everyone knew about the cowboy who'd pulled a dying baby from Miller's Creek, and everyone had an opinion. It ain't right, Martha Dawson whispered to her husband at the general store. An unmarried man and woman living together, raising a child that ain't theirs. What kind of example does that set? The kind where a baby gets to live instead of die, her husband replied. But Martha just clicked her tongue and shook her head. Ellie felt the stares every time she walked through town, the whispers that stopped when she got close, the turned backs and cold shoulders from women who used to smile at her. They're talking about us again. She stood at the window of Dr. Whitfield's office, watching two women hurry past with their heads bent together. Caleb didn't look up from where he was feeding Grace. Let them talk. Easy for you to say. You're not the one they're calling a fallen woman. Anyone says that to your face, you send them to me. Ellie turned to look at him. This rough-weathered cowboy, so gentle with the baby in his arms. Grace had finished her bottle and was playing with the buttons on his shirt, babbling happily. She's getting stronger every day, Ellie said softly. She's a fighter. Caleb lifted Grace to his shoulder and patted her back. Ain't you, little one? Grace burped loudly and giggled. Both adults laughed, and for a moment the weight of the world seemed lighter. Then the door opened and everything changed. Dr. Whitfield stepped inside, his face pale. We have a problem. Judge Prescott is here. He's brought lawyers from Dallas. Caleb stood slowly, handing Grace to Ellie. Where? Town hall. He's called an emergency meeting. Says it's about the abandoned infant situation. Thomas swallowed hard. Caleb, he's claiming the baby belongs to his family. Says she was stolen. Stolen? Ellie's voice rose. She was thrown in a creek to die. I know, but Prescott's got papers. Legal documents saying the child was kidnapped from a family member who was traveling through the area. That's a lie. Of course it's a lie, but he's got lawyers who'll swear it's the truth, and judges who owe him favors. Caleb grabbed his hat. Watch Grace. I'm going to that meeting. Caleb, wait. Ellie caught his arm. If you go in there angry, you'll play right into his hands. He wants you to lose your temper. He wants you to give him a reason to have you arrested. So what am I supposed to do? Sit here while he steals our daughter. The word hung in the air between them. Our daughter. Neither of them had said it out loud before. Ellie's grip on his arm tightened. We go together. We stay calm. And we don't give him anything he can use against us. Caleb stared at her for a long moment, then nodded. Together. Thomas cleared his throat. I'll stay with Grace. But be careful, both of you. Prescott didn't get where he is by playing fair. The town hall was packed when they arrived. It seemed like half of Silver Creek had turned out to see what would happen. Caleb spotted Sheriff Turner near the door, looking uncomfortable. The sheriff nodded at him but didn't smile. At the front of the room, Judge Henry Prescott sat behind a table like he owned the place, which Caleb reminded himself he basically did. The man was in his late 50s, silver-haired and sharp-eyed, dressed in a suit that cost more than most folks earned in a year. Beside him sat a young woman Caleb didn't recognize. She was thin and pale with blonde hair and blue eyes that looked too big for her face. Her hands were clasped tightly in her lap, and she kept her gaze fixed on the floor. Charlotte Prescott, Grace's mother. She looked like a ghost of herself. "Ah, Mr. Harrison." Prescott's voice carried through the room. "So good of you to join us. And Miss McBride as well. Please have a seat." "I'll stand," Caleb said. "Suit yourself." Prescott shuffled some papers. "I'll get straight to the point. The infant you've been harboring belongs to my family. My daughter Charlotte gave birth to her several months ago, and the child was stolen from us by a disgruntled former employee." "That's not true." Ellie's voice rang out clear and strong. "That baby was found in Miller's Creek tied up in a feed sack and left to die." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Prescott's jaw tightened. "Miss McBride, I understand you've become attached to the child, but the law is clear. Family rights supersede any temporary arrangements. Charlotte is the baby's mother, and she has every right to reclaim her daughter." "Then why didn't she—" Caleb stepped forward. "If that baby was stolen, why didn't Charlotte report it? Why didn't anyone in your family go to the sheriff?" "We were trying to handle the matter privately, to avoid scandal." "To avoid scandal?" Caleb's voice was flat. "A baby was missing, and you were worried about scandal." Charlotte finally looked up. Her eyes met Caleb's, and he saw something there that made his stomach clench. Fear. Not of him. Of her father. "Mr. Harrison," Prescott's tone hardened, "I'm offering you a chance to do the right thing here. Return the child to her rightful family, and we'll forget this whole unfortunate incident." "And if I don't, then I'll be forced to take legal action. And believe me, you do not want to go up against my lawyers in court." Ellie moved to stand beside Caleb. "We're not afraid of your lawyers." "You should be Miss McBride. I've ruined people far more powerful than a schoolteacher and a washed-up cowboy." Prescott smiled, but his eyes were cold. "I'm giving you 3 days. 3 days to hand over the child. After that, I'll have the sheriff remove her by force if necessary." "The hell you will." Caleb's voice dropped to a dangerous growl. Sheriff Turner stepped forward, placing himself between Caleb and Prescott. "Everybody calm down. This ain't the place for—" "This is exactly the place." Caleb didn't take his eyes off Prescott. "You want to take a baby from people who love her and give her back to a man who ordered her death. That's what this is really about, isn't it?" The room went dead silent. Prescott's face turned red. "That is a vicious lie." "Is it?" Caleb looked at Charlotte. Tell them what really happened to your baby." Charlotte's lips trembled. Tears spilled down her cheeks. She opened her mouth to speak, but her father grabbed her arm. "Charlotte has been through enough." Prescott's grip on his daughter tightened until she winced. "She doesn't need to be interrogated by the man who's holding her child hostage. She's not the one holding anyone hostage." Ellie's voice shook with anger. Look at her. She's terrified. Of you. How dare you? I dare because I know the truth. Ellie stepped forward, her chin raised. I taught Charlotte when she was in school. I know what kind of man you are. I know what you did to her when she disappointed you. Charlotte let out a small sob. Her father's face went from red to white. This meeting is over. Prescott stood abruptly, pulling Charlotte up with him. 3 days, Harrison. 3 days or I'll destroy everything you care about. He swept out of the room, dragging his daughter behind him. Charlotte looked back, once her eyes meeting Ellie's with desperate pleading. Help me, those eyes said. Please help me. The crowd began to disperse, buzzing with whispered speculation. Caleb stood motionless, his hands clenched at his sides. Caleb. Ellie touched his arm. We need to go. We need to make a plan. He's going to take her. Caleb's voice was hollow. He's got money power lawyers. What do we have? We have each other. We have the truth. And we have 3 days to figure out how to fight back. They walked back to Dr. Whitfield's office in silence, each lost in their own thoughts. When they arrived, they found Thomas pacing the floor with Grace in his arms. What happened? I heard shouting. Prescott's given us 3 days. Ellie took Grace from him, holding the baby close. After that, he's coming for her. 3 days isn't enough time to... It'll have to be. Caleb pulled off his hat and ran a hand through his hair. We need to find Hank Miller, the man Prescott paid to do what he did. If we can get him to testify, he'll never talk. Thomas shook his head. Miller's a drunk, but he's not stupid. He knows what Prescott will do to him if he opens his mouth. Then we make him understand what we'll do to him if he doesn't. Caleb. Ellie's voice was sharp. Threatening a witness won't help our case. I wasn't going to threaten him. I was going to appeal to whatever conscience he's got left. Caleb took a deep breath. A man who couldn't bring himself to kill a baby, there's still something human in him. Something we can reach. Grace began to fuss, picking up on the tension in the room. Ellie rocked her, gently humming the lullaby that always calmed her down. There's something else we need to do. Ellie's voice was quiet but determined. We need to talk to Charlotte. How? Her father's got her locked up tighter than Fort Knox. She goes to church every Sunday morning. Prescott makes the whole family attend to keep up appearances. Ellie looked at Caleb. I can get to her there, woman to woman. She deserves to know her baby is alive. That's risky. Everything we do from now on is risky. But Charlotte isn't our enemy. She's another one of his victims. That night, after Grace was asleep, Caleb and Ellie sat together in the small room that had become their home. The fire had burned low, casting long shadows across the walls. Tell me about your wife. Ellie's voice was soft. About Sarah. Caleb was quiet for so long that she thought he wouldn't answer. Then he spoke, his voice rough with old grief. She was the kindest woman I ever knew. Saw the good in everyone, even when there wasn't much good to see. She used to say I was too hard on myself, that I carried the weight of the world when I didn't have to. She sounds wonderful. She was. Caleb stared into the dying fire. When she got sick, I wasn't there. I was 3 days' ride away, chasing a gang of rustlers. By the time I got word and made it home, she was already gone, Lily too. That wasn't your fault, wasn't it? He looked at her with eyes full of pain. I chose the job over my family. I told myself I was doing something important, keeping people safe. But the people I should have been protecting were dying without me. You couldn't have known. No, but I could have been there. I could have held my wife's hand while she passed. I could have said goodbye to my little girl. His voice broke. Instead, I came home to 2 graves and an empty house. Ellie reached out and took his hand. I know what it's like, to blame yourself for something you couldn't control. Your husband, your son. She nodded, tears sliding down her cheeks. William was working in the mine when it collapsed. I'd begged him not to go that day. I had a feeling, this terrible feeling, that something was wrong. But he laughed and kissed me and said he'd be home for supper. He never came home. No. And 3 weeks later, Samuel got the whooping cough. I did everything I could. Stayed up all night, held him, prayed. Her voice faded to a whisper. He died in my arms. 6 months old. And I thought if I'd just prayed harder, if I'd been a better mother, if I'd... Stop! Caleb turned to face her, gripping both her hands. You listen to me, Ellie McBride. What happened to your son wasn't your fault. You loved that boy with everything you had. Sometimes love isn't enough to stop death, but that doesn't make it your fault. Then why does it feel like it is? Because that's what grief does. It makes us think we could have changed things, that if we'd just done something different. He shook his head. I've spent 8 years drowning in that kind of thinking. It doesn't help. It just keeps you stuck in the past while life moves on without you. Ellie looked at him through her tears. When did you get so wise? About 5 minutes ago. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. Turns out, it's easier to see the truth when you're talking about someone else's pain instead of your own. They sat in silence for a while, hands still clasped. The fire crackled softly, and somewhere in the other room, Grace made a small sound in her sleep. I'm scared, Ellie finally admitted. Not for me, for her. If Prescott takes her back, he won't. You can't promise that. No. Caleb met her eyes. But I can promise you this. Whatever happens, I'll fight for her with everything I've got. And I'll fight for you, too. Why? The question came out before she could stop it. You barely know me. Caleb was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. Because when I look at you, I see someone who understands, someone who's walked through the fire and come out the other side. And because... He hesitated. Because for the first time in 8 years, I don't feel alone. Ellie felt something shift in her chest, something warm and frightening and wonderful. I don't feel alone either, she whispered back. They stayed like that until the fire died down to embers, neither one willing to break the spell. Outside, the wind howled, and the first snowflakes of a new storm began to fall. The next morning, Caleb rode out before dawn to find Hank Miller. The man lived in a rundown shack on the edge of town, surviving on odd jobs and whiskey. When Caleb knocked on the door, it took several minutes before Miller answered. He was exactly what Rosa had described, thin, unshaven, with the shaking hands and bloodshot eyes of a man who'd made friends with the bottle. When he saw Caleb, the color drained from his face. I ain't talking to you. Yes, you are. Caleb pushed past him into the shack. We can do this easy, or we can do this hard. Your choice. Look, I don't know nothing about... I know what you did. Caleb's voice was ice. I know Prescott paid you to kill a baby. I know you couldn't do it, so you threw her in the creek instead and told yourself that made it better. Miller's face crumpled. I never wanted to hurt nobody. I just needed the money. My wife's sick and the medicine costs. Save it. Caleb grabbed the man by his shirt collar. That baby almost died. She was blue, frozen, barely breathing, and you left her there. I know. Tears streamed down Miller's weathered face. You think I don't know? I hear her crying every night. I see that little face every time I close my eyes. I'm going to hell for what I did. Maybe. Caleb released him. Or maybe you can make it right. How can I ever make something like that right? By telling the truth, by testifying about what Prescott paid you to do. Miller shook his head frantically. I can't. He'll kill me. You don't know what he's capable of. I know exactly what he's capable of. I pulled a dying baby from a frozen creek, remember? Caleb stepped closer. Here's what I know about you, Hank Miller. You're weak. You're scared. You made a terrible choice because you were desperate. But somewhere inside that miserable shell, there's still a man who couldn't bring himself to kill an innocent child. Miller was sobbing now, his whole body shaking. You've got a chance to make this right. One chance. Help me stop Prescott, and maybe, just maybe, you can look at yourself in the mirror again someday. And if I don't? Caleb's eyes hardened. Then I'll make sure everyone in this territory knows what you did. Your wife, your neighbors, every person you've ever met. You'll spend the rest of your miserable life known as the man who threw a baby in a creek to die. Miller stared at him with red-rimmed eyes. You'd do that? Without hesitation. A long silence stretched between them. Finally, Miller's shoulders slumped in defeat. What do you want me to do? While Caleb was confronting Miller, Ellie made her way to the small white church on the edge of town. Sunday service wouldn't start for another hour, but she knew Charlotte would be there early. The girl always arrived before her father, seeking whatever moments of peace she could find. Sure enough, Charlotte was sitting alone in the front pew, her head bowed in prayer. She startled when Ellie sat down beside her. "Miss McBride," Charlotte's voice was barely a whisper. "You shouldn't be here. If my father sees you..." "Your father isn't here yet, and there's something you need to know." Charlotte's eyes widened with fear. "Please, I can't help you. I want to, but..." "Your baby is alive." The words hit Charlotte like a physical blow. She went white, then red, then white again. Her hands flew to her mouth. "What?" "She's alive, Charlotte. She's healthy and beautiful, and she's got your eyes." Ellie took the girl's trembling hands. "Your father lied to you. The baby didn't die in childbirth. He paid a man to get rid of her. But the man couldn't do it. He put her in the creek and she survived. Caleb found her and saved her life." Charlotte was shaking so hard she could barely speak. "My baby. My Emma. We've been calling her Grace. But if you want to name her Emma..." "Grace." Charlotte whispered the name like a prayer. "Grace is perfect. She's really alive. She's waiting for you, Charlotte. She's the most beautiful little girl I've ever seen." Charlotte broke down, completely sobbing into her hands. Ellie held her, letting her cry, understanding that these were tears of joy and grief and rage all mixed together. "He told me she died." Charlotte's voice shook with fury. "He held me while I cried and told me it was God's will. He let me grieve for months while my baby was alive." She looked up at Ellie with fire in her eyes. "I want to see her. I want to hold her." "You can. But Charlotte, your father is fighting to get her back. He's threatening to take her from us by force. He doesn't want her. He wants to control her, just like he controls everything else." Charlotte wiped her tears angrily. "I won't let him have her. I won't let him hurt her the way he's hurt me." "Then help us. Stand up to him. Tell the truth about what he did." Charlotte's courage flickered, but didn't die. "He'll destroy me. He'll cut me off without a penny. He'll tell everyone I'm a liar and a fallen woman." "Maybe. But you'll have your daughter. And you'll have people who believe you." Ellie squeezed her hands. "You'll have us. Why would you help me? I'm the reason your baby was almost killed." "No, your father is the reason. You're a victim too, Charlotte. And it's time to stop being a victim and start being a mother." Charlotte stared at her for a long moment. Then something shifted in her face. Something hardened. "What do I need to do?" "Meet us tonight. Dr. Whitfield's office after dark. Your father won't know. And Charlotte..." Ellie paused. "Be ready. What happens next won't be easy. But I promise you, it'll be worth it." Charlotte nodded, wiping the last of her tears. "I'll be there. And Miss McBride, thank you. For telling me. For not giving up on my baby when everyone else did." Ellie stood to leave, but Charlotte grabbed her hand. "The man who found her. The cowboy. Caleb Harrison." Charlotte's voice trembled. Does he love her?" Ellie thought about Caleb's face when he looked at Grace, the way his whole being softened. The way he'd held her through the night when she was sick, singing off-key lullabies until she fell asleep. "Yes," she said simply. "He loves her like she's his own." Fresh tears slipped down Charlotte's cheeks, but she was smiling. "Then she's lucky. Luckier than I ever was." That night they gathered in Dr. Whitfield's office. Caleb and Ellie Thomas and Rosa and Charlotte, who had snuck out of her father's house through the servants' entrance. In the corner, Grace slept peacefully in her basket, unaware of the storm brewing around her. "He's got 2 days left before his deadline." Caleb stood by the window watching the empty street. "We need to move fast." "Miller's agreed to testify," Thomas asked. "He's terrified, but he'll do it. The guilt's been eating him alive." "And Charlotte?" Charlotte stepped forward, her voice steady despite her pale face. "I'll testify too. I'll tell everyone what my father did. How he lied to me, how he paid to have my baby killed." "That's enough." Ellie's voice was firm. "We have 2 witnesses willing to tell the truth. That has to be enough." "It won't be." Rosa's voice was quiet. "The judge owes Prescott too much money. He'll never rule against him." "Then we don't go to the judge." Caleb turned to face them. "We go to the people." "What do you mean?" "Prescott's power comes from his reputation, from people believing he's respectable. If we can show the whole town who he really is, what he really did, his power crumbles." Thomas shook his head. "That's a dangerous game. If we accuse him publicly and can't prove it, we can prove it. We have Rosa's testimony, Miller's confession, Charlotte's story." Caleb looked at each of them in turn. "Prescott's been hiding behind his money and his lawyers for too long. It's time to drag his secrets into the light." A soft sound came from the basket. Grace had woken up and was making small happy noises. Charlotte moved toward her, then stopped looking at Ellie. "May I?" Ellie nodded, stepping back. Charlotte lifted her daughter for the first time in 9 months. Grace looked up at this new face with curious eyes studying her features. Then she reached up and touched Charlotte's cheek, just as she always touched Ellie's. "Hello, my darling." Charlotte's voice broke. "Hello, my beautiful Grace. I'm your mama." Grace's face scrunched up. For a terrible moment, everyone held their breath, waiting for her to cry. But instead, she broke into a wide smile and grabbed a handful of Charlotte's hair. "She knows," Rosa whispered. "She knows her mother." Charlotte was crying again, but she was laughing too. "She's so beautiful. She's so perfect. How could anyone want to hurt her?" Ellie felt tears on her own cheeks as she watched the reunion. This was what they were fighting for. This moment. This love. Caleb moved to stand beside her. "We're going to win this," he said quietly. "I don't know how yet, but we're going to win." Ellie looked up at him, at this man who had become her partner in everything. "I know." "How do you know?" She glanced at Charlotte, at Grace, at the small group of people who had come together to fight for a child none of them were obligated to save. "Because we have something Prescott will never understand." She slipped her hand into Caleb's. "We have something worth fighting for." Outside, the storm had picked up. Snow fell thick and fast, covering the town in white. But inside the small warm room, surrounded by people who loved her, Grace fell asleep in her mother's arms, dreaming of nothing but safety and love. The real battle was still to come. But for now, in this moment, they had each other. And sometimes, that was enough. The morning of Prescott's deadline arrived with a bitter wind and gray skies. Caleb hadn't slept. He'd spent the night pacing, planning, running through every possible outcome in his mind. Now he stood at the window, watching the sun rise over Silver Creek, knowing that everything would change before it set again. "You should eat something." Ellie's voice came from behind him. "Not hungry." "Caleb." She touched his arm. "You need your strength. We all do." He turned to look at her. Dark circles under her eyes told him she hadn't slept either. But there was steel in her gaze that hadn't been there a week ago. "Are you ready for this?" he asked. "No." She managed a small smile. But I'm going to do it anyway. Grace woke with a happy babble, reaching for whoever would pick her up first. Caleb lifted her from the basket and held her close, breathing in her sweet baby scent. "Whatever happens today," he whispered against her soft hair, "I want you to know something. You saved me. You and Ellie both. I was dead inside before you came along, just going through the motions. And now... Ellie was watching him with something soft in her eyes. "Now I've got a reason to fight, a reason to live." He looked at her over Grace's head. "Two reasons, actually." Before Ellie could respond, the door burst open. Thomas rushed in, his face flushed with urgency. "Prescott's moving early. He's got Sheriff Turner and 4 deputies heading this way. They'll be here in 10 minutes. He said we had until noon." Ellie's voice sharpened with anger. "He lied. The man lies about everything." Thomas grabbed his medical bag. "You need to go, now. Take Grace and get out of town." "No." Caleb's voice was firm. "Running won't solve anything. He'll just hunt us down." "Then what?" "We do what we planned. We take this to the people." Caleb handed Grace to Ellie. "Thomas, ring the church bells. Get everyone to the town square." "The church bells? That's for emergencies." "This is an emergency. A man tried to murder a baby, and now he's using the law to finish the job. If that ain't an emergency, I don't know what is." Thomas hesitated for only a moment, then nodded and ran out. Seconds later, the church bells began to ring, loud, urgent, calling every citizen of Silver Creek to attention. Caleb strapped on his gun belt. Ellie watched him with worried eyes. "You're not going to shoot anyone?" "No. But Prescott needs to know I'm not backing down." He cupped her face in his hands. "Listen to me. Whatever happens out there, you protect Grace. That's the only thing that matters. Get her to safety if things go bad. What about you? I can take care of myself." "That's not what I asked." Her voice trembled. "I can't lose you, Caleb. Not now. Not after everything." He kissed her forehead, soft and tender. "You won't lose me. I promise." They walked out into the cold morning together. Already people were streaming toward the town square, confused and curious. The bells kept ringing, echoing off the buildings, demanding attention. Sheriff Turner met them halfway down Main Street. His face was apologetic but determined. "Caleb, Miss McBride, I've got orders to take the baby. Don't make this harder than it needs to be." "Whose orders, Jacob? The law's or Prescott's?" The sheriff's jaw tightened. "The judge signed the papers. It's legal." "Legal doesn't mean right. You know what Prescott did. You know that baby was thrown in the creek to die." "I don't know anything except what the law says. And the law says that child belongs with her family. Her family tried to kill her." A crowd was gathering now. Caleb saw familiar faces, shopkeepers, ranchers, housewives, children, all watching, waiting to see what would happen next. "Please." Sheriff Turner lowered his voice. "Don't do this in front of everyone. Just give me the baby and we can sort this out quietly." "No." Caleb's voice rang out loud and clear. "The time for quiet is over. Everyone in this town deserves to know the truth about Judge Henry Prescott." "Caleb, don't." "The truth about what he did to his own granddaughter. The truth about what kind of man is running this town." The crowd pressed closer, murmuring with curiosity and concern. Caleb climbed onto the raised platform in the center of the square, the same platform where town announcements were made and criminals were sometimes hanged. "My name is Caleb Harrison. Most of you know me. I've been living on the edge of this town for 8 years, keeping to myself, minding my own business." He looked out over the sea of faces. "A week ago, I found a baby in Miller's Creek. She was tied up in a feed sack, left to freeze to death. I pulled her out, brought her to Dr. Whitfield, and we saved her life." More murmurs. Some people nodded, they'd heard the story. "That baby's name is Grace, and her grandfather, the man who ordered her death, is standing right there." He pointed to where Prescott had just arrived, flanked by his Dallas lawyers. The judge's face went from pink to purple. "That is slander." Prescott pushed through the crowd. This man is a liar and a kidnapper. Sheriff, arrest him immediately. Hold on. An older woman stepped forward. Martha Dawson, the same one who'd been gossiping about Caleb and Ellie. I want to hear what he has to say. Mrs. Dawson, this man is dangerous. I said hold on. Martha crossed her arms. I've known Judge Prescott for 30 years, and I've known Caleb Harrison for 8. One of them has always been honest with me. The other one foreclosed on my sister's farm when she was 3 days late on a payment. A ripple of agreement went through the crowd. Prescott's face darkened. This is absurd. I won't stand here and be accused by me. Everyone turned. Charlotte Prescott stood at the edge of the crowd, her face pale but her voice steady. She walked forward slowly, and the crowd parted for her like water. Charlotte. Prescott's voice turned honey-sweet. Darling, what are you doing here? You should be at home resting. I should be with my daughter. Charlotte's voice didn't waver. The daughter you told me was dead. Dead silence fell over the square. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Charlotte, you're confused. The stress has been... Don't. Charlotte's eyes blazed. Don't you dare pretend you care about me. Don't you dare act like a loving father when you've been lying to me for 9 months. She turned to face the crowd. My name is Charlotte Prescott. 9 months ago I gave birth to a baby girl. My father told me she died during delivery. He held me while I cried. He watched me grieve. He let me believe my child was gone. Her voice broke, but she kept going. But she didn't die. My father paid a man to take her away, to get rid of her, because he was ashamed, because having an unmarried daughter with a baby would ruin his precious reputation. She's lying. Prescott's composure cracked. She's mentally unstable. She doesn't know what she's saying. I know exactly what I'm saying. Charlotte walked toward Ellie and reached for Grace. May I? Ellie handed her the baby. Grace looked up at Charlotte with those big blue eyes, then smiled and reached for her face. This is my daughter. Charlotte held her up so everyone could see. Look at her. Look at her eyes. Look at her hair. She's mine. And my father tried to kill her. The crowd erupted in shocked whispers. Prescott was losing control, his carefully constructed facade crumbling. She's delusional. Can't you see? The grief has driven her mad. Then explain this. Rosa Mendez pushed through the crowd. I've worked in the Prescott house for 15 years. I heard everything. I heard the judge talking to Hank Miller. I heard him say the baby would be better off dead than growing up a bastard. You're fired. Prescott's face was purple with rage. You're a lying, ungrateful... I'm telling the truth, something you wouldn't recognize if it bit you. There's more. Another voice joined the chorus. Hank Miller stumbled forward, looking like a man who hadn't slept in weeks. His hands shook, and tears ran down his unshaven face. I did it. I'm the one who put her in the creek. Prescott paid me $50 to make the problem go away. He fell to his knees in the dirt. I couldn't kill her. I couldn't. So I put her in the water and told myself God would decide if she lived or died. He looked at Caleb with haunted eyes. You found her. You saved her. And I've been living in hell ever since, knowing what I almost did. Arrest that man, Prescott screamed at Sheriff Turner. He just confessed to attempted murder. He confessed to following your orders. The sheriff's voice was cold. Seems to me you're the one who should be arrested. How dare you? I'll have your badge, I'll have you thrown out of this town. Go ahead and try. Sheriff Turner stepped forward, his hand on his gun. I've looked the other way for years because I owed you money, but I ain't owing you my soul. Not anymore. The crowd was turning. Caleb could feel it, the shift in energy, the anger building. People who had respected Prescott were looking at him with new eyes. People who had feared him were finding their courage. This is madness. Prescott grabbed one of his lawyers. Do something. Sir, I don't think... I'm not paying you to think I'm paying you to protect me. With respect, sir, There's nothing in the law that protects you from the truth." Prescott spun around looking for any ally, any support. But everywhere he turned, he found only cold stares and crossed arms. "You'll all regret this." His voice dropped to a hiss. "Every single one of you. I own this town. I own the bank, the businesses, the land. Without me, you're nothing." "We're not nothing." Martha Dawson stepped forward. "We're people who finally opened our eyes." Prescott lunged forward, trying to grab Grace from Charlotte's arms. "Give me that child! She belongs to me!" Caleb moved faster. He caught Prescott's wrist and twisted it behind his back, forcing the older man to his knees. "Touch her again, and I'll break more than your arm." "You can't do this. I'll have you hanged." "You're not having anyone do anything." Sheriff Turner pulled out his handcuffs. "Henry Prescott, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, fraud, and child endangerment." "You can't arrest me. I'm Judge Prescott." "Not anymore, you're not." The sheriff snapped the cuffs on. "Take him to the jail." Two deputies led Prescott away, still shouting threats and curses. The crowd parted to let them pass, and some people spat at the ground as he walked by. In the sudden quiet that followed, Charlotte stood holding Grace, tears streaming down her face. The baby was getting fussy now, overwhelmed by all the noise and emotion. "Shh." Charlotte rocked her gently. "It's okay, sweetheart. It's all over now." But Grace wasn't looking at Charlotte. She was reaching toward Ellie, her little arms straining her face, crumpling. "Mama." The word came out clear and heartbreaking. "Mama." Charlotte went still. The joy drained from her face, replaced by something painful and raw. She wants you." Her voice was barely a whisper. Ellie stepped forward, her own eyes wet. "Charlotte, I'm so sorry. We didn't try to replace you. You saved her." Charlotte carefully transferred Grace into Ellie's arms. The baby immediately calmed, snuggling against Ellie's chest. "You and Mr. Harrison. You saved her life and you gave her love when I couldn't. You're her mother. I gave birth to her." Charlotte watched Grace with a mixture of love and loss. "But she doesn't know me. She knows you. She loves you." The two women stood facing each other, one who had carried Grace in her body, one who had carried her in her heart. Both bound to this child in ways that couldn't be measured or compared. "What happens now?" Ellie asked softly. "I don't know." Charlotte wiped her eyes. "I don't have a home anymore. I don't have money. My father will disown me the moment he gets the chance. You have us." Caleb stepped forward. "We're not going to abandon you, Charlotte. You're Grace's mother. That makes you family." "Family." Charlotte said the word like she was tasting something foreign. "I'm not sure I know what that means anymore." "Then let us show you." The crowd was dispersing now, people drifting back to their homes and businesses. But many of them stopped to touch Charlotte's arm, to offer words of support, to welcome her into a community that had finally opened its eyes. Dr. Whitfield approached with a blanket. "You're all going to freeze out here. Come inside, I'll make some tea." They gathered in his office, Caleb, Ellie, Charlotte, Rosa, and little Grace. The warmth of the fire slowly thawed their cold hands and feet, but the emotional temperature was still complicated. "My father won't stay in jail long." Charlotte stared into her cup of tea. "He has too many connections, too many people who owe him favors." "Let him come." Caleb's voice was hard. "Half the town just watched him get arrested. His reputation is destroyed." "You don't know him like I do. He'll find a way. He always finds a way." "Not this time." Ellie sat down beside Charlotte. "This time, he doesn't have the shadows to hide in. Everyone knows what he did." Grace had fallen asleep in Ellie's arms, exhausted by the morning's drama. Charlotte reached out and gently touched her daughter's cheek. "She's so beautiful. She looks like Daniel." "Daniel?" Ellie asked softly. "Her father." The man I loved. A sad smile crossed Charlotte's face. He was a ranch hand on my father's property. We met in secret for months. When I found out I was pregnant, he wanted to marry me. He wanted to give me and the baby a real life. What happened to him? Charlotte's smile faded. My father happened. He found out about us. Had Daniel beaten and run out of town. Threatened to kill him if he ever came back. Her voice hardened. I haven't seen him since. I don't even know if he's alive. We could find him. Caleb leaned forward. I still have contacts from my ranger days. People who know how to track someone down. You would do that for me. For Grace. She deserves to know her father if he's out there. Charlotte's eyes filled with fresh tears. Why? Why are you all being so kind to me? I'm a stranger. My family tried to kill your baby. She's not our baby. Ellie's voice was gentle but honest. She's yours. We were just keeping her safe until you could take her back. But she loves you. She calls you Mama. She'll learn to love you too. Children have big hearts. There's room for all of us. The door opened and Sheriff Turner walked in. His face was grim. We've got a problem. Prescott's Dallas lawyers are already working to get him released. They're claiming the arrest was unlawful, that there's no evidence of wrongdoing. No evidence. Caleb stood up angrily. Miller confessed in front of 50 witnesses. Miller's a drunk. They're saying he's unreliable, that he made up the whole story for attention. Rosa heard Prescott give the order. Rosa's a former employee with a grudge. That's what they're saying. Jacob ran a hand through his hair. Look, I believe you. I know Prescott's guilty as sin, but believing and proving are two different things in a court of law. Then we find more proof. Caleb started pacing. Prescott paid Miller $50. Money like that leaves a trail. Bank records, witnesses. My father's careful. Charlotte spoke up. He never writes anything down, never leaves evidence. It's how he's gotten away with things his whole life. There's got to be something, some way to... There is. Everyone turned to look at Rosa. She had been quiet since the confrontation, sitting in the corner with her hands clasped. What do you mean? Ellie asked. The judge, he keeps a ledger, a private one hidden in his study. I've seen it. He writes down every payment, every bribe, every secret. He's been keeping it for years. Why would he do something that stupid? Insurance. Rosa's voice was bitter. He uses it to blackmail people who cross him. You want to betray me? Remember, I have proof of everything you've ever done for me. Do you know where this ledger is? In his study. Hidden behind a painting of his wife. There's a safe in the wall. Caleb looked at Sheriff Turner. Can you get a warrant to search his house? Not without more evidence. And even if I could, his lawyers would have everything removed before we got there. Then we don't wait for a warrant. Caleb's eyes hardened. We go tonight. That's breaking and entering. I can't be part of that. Then don't be. Caleb turned to the others. I'll go alone. If I get caught, it's on me. No. Ellie stood up. You're not going alone. I'm coming with you. Ellie. Don't argue with me, Caleb Harrison. We started this together and we'll finish it together. I'm coming too. Charlotte's voice was quiet but firm. I know that house better than anyone. I know where the guards are when they change shifts, how to get in without being seen. Charlotte, if your father catches you, then let him catch me. I'm done being afraid of him. I'm done letting him control my life. She stood up and there was fire in her eyes. He tried to kill my daughter. There is nothing he can do to me that's worse than that. The three of them looked at each other, the broken cowboy, the grieving schoolteacher, and the defiant daughter, an unlikely team bound together by love for a baby who had survived against all odds. Tonight then, Caleb nodded. After midnight, when the house is quiet. I'll stay with Grace. Rosa reached for the baby. Keep her safe. Ellie hesitated before handing Grace over. The baby stirred but didn't wake, settling easily into Rose's arms. "Protect her with your life." "I will, I promise." Dr. Whitfield cleared his throat. "I'll stay too. If anything goes wrong, you'll need medical help." "Nothing's going to go wrong." Caleb's voice was more confident than he felt. "We get in, we get the ledger, we get out. Simple." "Nothing about this situation has been simple," Ellie reminded him. "No." He looked at her, really looked at her, and something passed between them that didn't need words. But some things are worth fighting for, no matter how hard. The hours until midnight passed slowly. Caleb cleaned his gun. Ellie helped Charlotte plan their route into the house. Grace woke up and played happily, unaware of the danger her family was about to face. When the clock struck 12, they gathered at the door. Rosa was holding Grace, who had fallen asleep again. Dr. Whitfield stood ready with his medical bag. "Be careful." Thomas gripped Caleb's hand. "All of you." "We will." Ellie kissed Grace's forehead. "We'll be back soon, sweetheart. I promise." Charlotte reached out and touched her daughter's hand. "I love you," she whispered. "I'll spend the rest of my life making up for the time we lost." Then they stepped out into the cold night, three people bound by love and determination, walking toward a confrontation that would decide all their futures. The Prescott mansion loomed ahead, dark and imposing against the winter sky. "There," Charlotte pointed to a side door. "The servants' entrance. It's never locked." They moved quietly through the shadows, their breath forming clouds in the frigid air. Caleb went first, his hand on his gun. Ellie followed close behind, her heart pounding. Charlotte brought up the rear, guiding them with whispered directions. The door creaked as they slipped inside. The house was silent, but Caleb could feel danger in the air. Something wasn't right. "The study is this way." Charlotte led them down a dark hallway. They reached the door. Charlotte pushed it open, and they stepped inside. And froze. Judge Prescott sat behind his desk, a gun in his hand, and a cold smile on his face. "Welcome home, Charlotte. I've been expecting you." Prescott's smile widened as he watched the three intruders freeze in his doorway. The gun in his hand didn't waver. "Did you really think I wouldn't know that my own daughter wouldn't betray me the moment she got the chance?" He gestured with the weapon. "Come in, all of you. Close the door." Caleb stepped forward, keeping Ellie and Charlotte behind him. "Put the gun down, Prescott." "I don't think so." Prescott rose from his chair, his eyes fixed on Charlotte. "You disappoint me, daughter. After everything I've done for you, everything I've sacrificed." "Sacrificed?" Charlotte's voice shook with rage. "You tried to murder my baby." "I tried to save this family from disgrace. You're the one who spread your legs for a ranch hand like a common—" "Don't." Caleb's voice cut through like a blade. "Don't you dare finish that sentence." Prescott laughed. It was an ugly sound full of contempt. The noble cowboy, defending women's honor like something out of a dime novel. "You're pathetic, Harrison. You found a baby in a creek, and suddenly you think you're a hero." "I think I'm a man who knows right from wrong, which is more than I can say for you." "Right and wrong," Prescott sneered. "Those are words poor people use to comfort themselves. In the real world, there's only power and weakness, winners and losers." He pointed the gun directly at Caleb's chest. "And tonight you lose. Tonight, you—" "Father, please." Charlotte stepped forward, her hands raised. "This doesn't have to end in violence. Just let us go. We'll leave town. You'll never see us again." "Leave town?" Prescott's laugh was bitter. "And spend the rest of my life wondering when you'll come back. When you'll decide to tell the world what I did know. The only way this ends is with all of you dead." Ellie felt her blood run cold. "You can't kill 3 people and get away with it." "Can't I? Intruders broke into my home. I defended myself. A tragic accident. The sheriff owes me too much to ask questions, and my lawyers will handle the rest." He shrugged. "It won't be the first time I've made problems disappear." "What problems?" Caleb kept his voice steady, trying to buy time. What else have you done, Prescott? You want a confession? Fine. Prescott's eyes glittered with dark pride. Daniel Martinez, Charlotte's precious ranch hand. You want to know what happened to him? Charlotte went pale. What? What did you do? I had him killed. 3 months after I ran him out of town, paid 2 men to find him and put a bullet in his head. Prescott watched his daughter's face crumble with something like satisfaction. He was going to come back for you. Can you imagine the audacity? A Mexican stable boy thinking he could take my daughter. No. Charlotte's voice was barely a whisper. No, you're lying. Why would I lie? He's dead, Charlotte. Has been for 6 months. He's buried in an unmarked grave somewhere in New Mexico, and no one will ever find him. Charlotte collapsed against the wall, a sound of pure anguish tearing from her throat. Ellie caught her before she hit the floor, holding her as sobs racked her body. You monster! Ellie's voice shook with fury. You absolute monster! I'm a father protecting his family. Everything I've done for this family's future. Prescott's voice rose. But you couldn't see that, could you, Charlotte? You had to fall in love with the help. You had to get pregnant. You had to ruin everything. She didn't ruin anything. Caleb's hand moved slowly toward his gun. You did. You ruined your own family with your pride and your cruelty. Don't! Prescott noticed the movement and raised his weapon higher. Touch that gun and I'll kill you where you stand. You're going to kill us anyway. You just said so. True. But I can make it quick or I can make it slow. Your choice. Caleb's mind raced. He needed to get that gun away from Prescott. He needed to protect Ellie and Charlotte. But any move he made could get them all killed. The ledger. He kept talking, stalling. Rosa told us about it. The one where you keep all your secrets, all the bribes, all the blackmail, all the murders. Prescott's smile flickered. Rosa talks too much. She'll be dealt with next. You can't kill everyone who knows the truth. Watch me. Father. Charlotte pulled herself up, Ellie supporting her. Her face was streaked with tears, but her voice had hardened. I want to see it. See what? The ledger. Before you kill us, I want to see the proof of everything you've done, everything you are. Prescott studied her for a moment. Why? What difference does it make? Because I want to know. Charlotte's voice broke. I want to know how many lives you've destroyed. I want to know what kind of man my father really is. Something flickered in Prescott's eyes. Pride, maybe. Or the need to show off his power one last time. Fine. He moved to the wall where a portrait of his late wife hung. You want to see your father's legacy? Here it is. He kept the gun trained on them with one hand, while the other swung the portrait aside, revealing a small safe. His fingers worked the combination. This was the moment. Caleb tensed, ready to move. But before he could act, the door behind them crashed open. Nobody move! Sheriff Turner burst in, gun drawn, with 4 deputies behind him. His eyes swept the room, taking in the scene. Prescott at the safe, Caleb and the women backed against the wall, the gun in Prescott's hand. Put the weapon down, Judge. Prescott's face contorted with rage. How dare you? This is my home. And those are 3 citizens you're holding at gunpoint. I said put it down. You work for me, Turner. You owe me everything. I owed you. The sheriff's voice was cold. Past tense. Now I work for the people of this town. And those people want justice. For a long moment, no one moved. The tension in the room was suffocating. Caleb could see Prescott calculating, weighing his options. Then slowly the judge lowered his gun. You're making a mistake, Jacob. A mistake you'll regret for the rest of your life. Maybe. Turner moved forward and took the weapon. But at least I'll be able to live with myself. Deputies surrounded Prescott, pulling his hands behind his back. But the judge wasn't done. You think this changes anything? I'll be out by morning. My lawyers. Your lawyers already tried. Turner's smile was grim. Judge Crawford from the county seat arrived an hour ago. He's been reviewing the evidence. Seems a lot of people have been waiting a long time to see you fall, Prescott. They were just afraid to speak up. Evidence. What evidence? Turner nodded to one of his deputies who stepped forward and opened the safe. Inside were stacks of papers and a leather-bound ledger. Rosa told us where to find it. Dr. Whitfield kept you distracted while we got a warrant from Judge Crawford. Turner pulled out the ledger and flipped through it. My God, it's all here. Names, dates, amounts, every dirty deal you've ever made. Prescott's face went white. That's private property. You can't. I can, and I did. Turner handed the ledger to a deputy. Take this to Judge Crawford. Every page of it. As they led Prescott toward the door, he turned back to look at Charlotte. For a moment, his mask of arrogance slipped, and Caleb saw something almost human beneath. I did it for you. His voice cracked. Everything I did for this family. No. Charlotte met his eyes without flinching. You did it for yourself, for your pride, for your legacy. You never cared about me. You never cared about anyone but yourself. Charlotte. Don't say my name. Her voice was ice. I don't have a father anymore. He died the day he ordered my baby thrown in a creek. They took Prescott away. The door closed behind him, and suddenly the room felt very empty. Charlotte collapsed into a chair, her whole body shaking. Ellie knelt beside her, holding her hand. He killed Daniel. He killed him, and he never told me. I'm so sorry. Ellie's voice was thick with tears. I'm so sorry, Charlotte. I kept hoping. All these months I kept hoping he'd come back for me, that somehow we'd find each other again. Charlotte's face crumpled. And he's been dead this whole time. Caleb stood apart, giving them space. His own emotions were a tangled mess, relief, anger, grief, for a man he'd never known. Sheriff Turner approached him. How'd you know we were coming? I didn't. Caleb shook his head. Figured we were on our own. Rosa came to us right after you left. Said she had a bad feeling. Asked us to follow you just in case. Turner glanced at the women. Good thing we did. Good thing. Caleb's voice was hollow. Is it over? Really over? The ledger's got enough in it to put Prescott away for life. Murder, bribery, fraud, the man kept records of everything. Turner shook his head in disbelief. Arrogant bastard. Thought he was untouchable. Nobody's untouchable. No, I reckon not. They took Charlotte back to Dr. Whitfield's office, supporting her between them. She hadn't stopped crying since learning about Daniel, but her tears were silent now, the deep, devastating grief of someone who had lost everything. Rosa met them at the door, Grace in her arms. The baby was awake, fussing softly, reaching for the familiar faces she loved. Is it over? Rosa's voice trembled. It's over. Ellie took Grace and held her close. He's going to prison. He's never going to hurt anyone again. Rosa crossed herself. Thank God. Thank God. Charlotte sat in the corner staring at nothing. Grace babbled happily, and the sound seemed to pull Charlotte back from wherever she'd gone. Can I? She stopped, swallowed hard. Can I hold her? Ellie brought Grace to her. The baby looked up at Charlotte with curious eyes, then reached for her face with chubby fingers. Hello, my darling. Charlotte's voice broke. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry I couldn't protect you. I'm sorry your father never got to meet you. Tears spilled down her cheeks. He would have loved you so much. He would have been such a good father. Grace made a soft cooing sound and snuggled against Charlotte's chest, as if she understood, as if she was offering comfort in the only way she knew how. Ellie and Caleb stepped back, giving them privacy. They stood by the window, watching the first light of dawn creep over the horizon. It's really over. Ellie's voice was barely a whisper. The hard part is... Caleb turned to look at her. But there's still a lot to figure out. Like what? Like what happens now, with Charlotte, with Grace, with... He hesitated. With us. Ellie met his eyes. What about us? I've been thinking about something. Caleb's voice was rough with emotion. Something I never thought I'd think about again. What's that? A future. A real future. With a family. He swallowed hard. With you. Ellie felt her heart stop. Caleb, I know it's too soon. I know we barely know each other. But these past weeks, he shook his head. I've felt more alive than I have in 8 years. You and Grace, you brought me back from the dead, and I don't want to lose that. I don't want to lose you. You're not going to lose me. Then marry me. The words hung in the air between them. Ellie stared at him, her mind spinning. You don't have to answer now. Caleb's voice softened. I know it's sudden. I know there's a lot to work out. But I wanted you to know. I wanted you to know that when I look at the future, you're in it. You and Grace. That's all I want. Ellie opened her mouth to respond, but before she could speak, Charlotte's voice cut through the moment. She should call you Mama. They turned. Charlotte was looking at them, Grace asleep in her arms. What? Ellie's voice was confused. Grace, she should call you Mama. Charlotte's eyes were red from crying, but there was peace in them now. You're the one who saved her. You're the one she loves. I can't take that from her. Charlotte, you're her mother. I gave birth to her, but you raised her. You stayed up all night with her. You taught her to laugh again. Charlotte looked down at the sleeping baby. I want to be part of her life. I want her to know me, but I can't pretend that I'm the one she needs most. We can figure this out together. Ellie moved closer. You don't have to give her up. I'm not giving her up. I'm making sure she has the best life possible. Charlotte looked at Caleb. You love her, don't you? Like she was your own? More than anything. And you love her too. Charlotte turned to Ellie. I see it every time you look at her. Every time you hold her. I do. Ellie's voice broke. I love her so much it scares me. Then that's my answer. Charlotte stood carefully, not wanting to wake Grace. I want you to raise her, both of you, together. Charlotte, let me finish. Charlotte took a deep breath. I don't have anywhere to go. My father's in prison, and everything he owned will probably be seized by the court. I have nothing to offer her. Nothing except love. Love is enough. Caleb's voice was firm. We'll figure out the rest. You mean... I mean your family now. Grace's family. And family sticks together. He looked at Ellie. Right. Ellie nodded, tears streaming down her face. Right. Charlotte, you can stay with us. Help us raise her. She'll know you're her mother. She'll know everything. Everything. Charlotte's voice wavered. Even about Daniel. Even about how she was almost... everything. Ellie took her hand. When she's old enough, we'll tell her the whole story. About her father who loved her. About her mother who fought for her. About everyone who refused to give up on her. Charlotte broke down again. But these were different tears, healing tears. Thank you. The words came out as a sob. Thank you for not giving up on my baby. Thank you for not giving up on me. Grace stirred, woken by the emotion around her. She opened her eyes, looked at Charlotte, then at Ellie, then reached for Caleb with a happy squeal. Papa? Caleb took her, holding her close. I'm here, little one. Papa's here. Grace patted his face with her small hand, then turned and reached for Ellie. Mama. Ellie moved to stand beside Caleb, and Grace grabbed onto both of them, babbling contentedly. She knows. Rose's voice was soft. She knows she's loved. Dr. Whitfield cleared his throat. He'd been standing quietly in the corner watching. I hate to interrupt, but there's something you all should know. What is it? Caleb looked up. Judge Crawford sent word. Prescott's ledger had more than just local crimes. There's evidence of corruption going all the way to the territorial government. Federal marshals are on their way. Federal marshals. Prescott's been bribing officials for years. Judges, politicians, lawmen. The whole thing's going to blow wide open. Thomas paused. There's going to be a lot of chaos in the coming weeks. A lot of people looking for someone to blame. Let them look. Caleb's arm tightened around Ellie. We've got nothing to hide. I know, but you might want to keep your heads down, just until things settle. Caleb looked at Ellie, then at Charlotte, then at Grace. His family. His strange, beautiful, unexpected family. We'll be careful. He pressed a kiss to Grace's head. But we're not hiding anymore. We spent too long in the shadows. It's time to live in the light. The sun had fully risen now, streaming through the windows. Grace laughed and clapped her hands, delighted by the brightness. I think she agrees. Ellie smiled through her tears. She's a smart girl. Charlotte reached out and touched her daughter's cheek. She knows when something good is coming. Caleb looked at the three most important people in his world: the woman he loved, the child who had saved him, and the young mother who had found the courage to fight. They had survived fire and ice, betrayal and loss. They had faced down a monster and won. And now, finally, they could begin to heal. So, Ellie turned to him, her eyes bright. You asked me a question earlier. Caleb felt his heart skip. I said you didn't have to answer right away. I know what you said. She reached up and touched his face. But I know what I want. I've known for a while now. And, yes. The word came out like a prayer. Yes, I'll marry you. Caleb kissed her, then right there in front of everyone, a kiss full of promise and hope and all the things he'd thought he'd lost forever. Grace giggled and grabbed both their faces, trying to join in. Charlotte laughed through her tears. Rosa and Thomas clapped, and for the first time in 8 years, Caleb Harrison felt something he'd forgotten was possible. Joy. Pure, unbridled joy. The door opened one more time. Sheriff Turner stepped in, his face troubled. Sorry to interrupt, but there's someone here. Says he's looking for Charlotte Prescott. Charlotte tensed. Who? A young man. Mexican. Says his name is Daniel Martinez. The room went absolutely still. Charlotte's face drained of color. That's impossible. My father said... He told me Daniel was dead. Well, ma'am, either your father lied about that too, or there's a ghost standing in my office. Turner stepped aside. He says he's been searching for you for 6 months. Says nothing could keep him away. And there in the doorway stood a young man with dark hair and desperate eyes. His gaze found Charlotte, and his whole face transformed. Charlotte. His voice broke. I found you. I finally found you. Charlotte stood frozen, unable to move, unable to breathe. Then she let out a cry that held all the grief and hope and love she'd been carrying for 9 months. Daniel! She ran to him, and he caught her, holding her like he'd never let go. Your father's men shot me, left me for dead in the desert. Daniel's voice was muffled against her hair. But I survived. I crawled to a farmhouse. They saved my life. He pulled back to look at her face. I've been searching ever since. I heard about the trial, about the baby. Daniel, there's so much I have to tell you. I know. His eyes moved to Grace, still in Caleb's arms. I know everything. The sheriff told me on the way here. Tears streamed down his face. Is that our daughter? Charlotte nodded, unable to speak. Can I see her? Caleb carried Grace forward. The baby looked at this new face with curious eyes. Then she smiled, that bright, beautiful smile that had saved them all. Daniel reached out with trembling hands and touched his daughter's cheek. She's beautiful. She looks just like you, Charlotte. She has your eyes. Charlotte was sobbing now. I see you in her every day. May I hold her? Caleb transferred Grace carefully into Daniel's arms. The young man held her like she was made of glass, like she might break if he breathed too hard. "Hello, mija." His voice cracked. "I'm your papa. I've been looking for you for so long." Grace studied his face for a moment. Then she reached up and grabbed his nose, giggling. Everyone in the room laughed through their tears. "She likes you." Charlotte leaned against Daniel's shoulder. "I think she knows." "Knows what?" "That you're hers, that you came back for her." Charlotte looked up at him with all the love she'd been hiding for months. "That nothing could keep you away." Daniel kissed her forehead, then looked at the others in the room, at Caleb and Ellie, at Rosa and Thomas, at the sheriff who'd helped them all. "Thank you." His voice was thick with emotion. "Thank you for saving my family." "That's what family does." Caleb put his arm around Ellie. "We save each other." Grace babbled happily, grabbing at Daniel's shirt, then reaching for Charlotte, then toward Ellie and Caleb. Wanting everyone close. Wanting everyone together. "She's got a lot of people who love her." Ellie smiled through her tears. "She does." Charlotte looked around the room at all the faces, old and new, broken and healing. "We all do." Outside, the sun continued to rise over Silver Creek, washing the town in gold. Inside, a family came together not by blood, but by choice. By love. By the unbreakable bonds forged in the hardest of times. And Grace, the baby, who had survived against all odds, laughed in her father's arms, surrounded by the people who would spend the rest of their lives making sure she never felt alone again. Daniel held Grace for hours that first night, unable to let her go. He memorized every feature of her face, the curve of her cheeks, the color of her eyes, the way she smiled when she grabbed his finger. "She's perfect." His voice was rough with emotion. "Absolutely perfect." Charlotte sat beside him, her head on his shoulder, watching their daughter sleep. "I thought I'd lost both of you. I thought I'd spend the rest of my life alone." "Never." Daniel pressed a kiss to her hair. "Your father's men shot me twice, left me in the desert to die. But every time I closed my eyes, I saw your face. I heard your voice, and I knew I had to survive. I had to find you." "How did you make it 2 gunshot wounds in the desert?" "A rancher found me. An old man named Francisco. He and his wife nursed me back to health. It took 3 months before I could walk again." Daniel's jaw tightened. "By the time I was strong enough to travel, you'd disappeared. Your father told everyone you'd gone back east for schooling. He lied about everything." Charlotte's voice was bitter. "He told me you abandoned me, that you ran away when you found out about the baby." "I would never—" "I know that now." She looked up at him. "I should have known it then. I should have had more faith in you. You were scared. Alone. Your father was manipulating you." Daniel cupped her face in his hands. "None of this was your fault. None of it." Grace stirred in his arms, making soft sounds. Both parents froze, waiting to see if she'd wake, but she just snuggled closer and settled back into sleep. "She's going to need time." Charlotte's voice was quiet. "She doesn't know us. Not really. Ellie and Caleb, they're the ones she runs to when she's scared. Then we'll take it slow. We'll be patient." Daniel looked at his daughter with fierce determination. "However long it takes, we'll earn her trust. We'll earn her love." "What if she never sees us as her real parents?" "She will. But even if she doesn't—" Daniel paused, gathering his thoughts. "Even if she grows up calling them Mama and Papa, that's okay. What matters is that she's alive, that she's loved, that she has people willing to fight for her." Charlotte's eyes filled with tears. "When did you become so wise?" "Almost dying in the desert gave me time to think." A ghost of a smile crossed his face. "I realized that love isn't about possession. It's about wanting the best for someone, even if that best doesn't include you." "It does include you." Charlotte gripped his hand. "Grace needs her father. I need you. We're going to be a family, Daniel. A real family." What about your father's money? His property? You said everything would be seized. Let them have it. I don't want anything that belonged to him. Charlotte's voice hardened. We'll start fresh. Build something new, something clean. With what I have nothing to offer you. No money, no land. Nothing but 2 hands and a willingness to work. That's more than enough. Charlotte kissed him softly. That's everything. The next few weeks brought more changes than Silver Creek had seen in a decade. Federal marshals arrived to investigate Prescott's corruption, and the ripples spread far and wide. 3 territorial officials were arrested. 2 judges were removed from the bench. The bank was placed under new management. Through it all, the little family at Dr. Whitfield's office grew stronger. Caleb and Ellie worked side by side, caring for Grace while helping Charlotte and Daniel find their footing. Daniel took a job at the livery stable, working from dawn to dusk to earn enough for a small place of their own. You don't have to do this, Caleb told him one evening. Stay with us. There's room. I appreciate it. More than you know. Daniel wiped the sweat from his brow. But I need to provide for my family. I need to prove to myself, if no one else, that I can take care of them. You don't have to prove anything. Yes, I do. Daniel's eyes were serious. Charlotte's father thought I wasn't good enough for her. He tried to have me killed because I was just a poor ranch hand. I need to show the world, show my daughter, that a man's worth isn't measured by his bank account. Caleb understood. He'd spent years measuring his own worth by his failures, the family he couldn't save, the job he'd walked away from, the walls he'd built around his heart. You're already a good man, Daniel. Grace is lucky to have you. She's lucky to have all of us. Daniel smiled. That's what I'm realizing. Family isn't about blood or money or status. It's about showing up, day after day, being there when it matters. Grace was learning to walk now, toddling between the adults with increasing confidence. She still reached for Ellie, most often, still called her Mama without hesitation. But she was warming to Charlotte and Daniel too, letting them hold her, smiling when they sang to her, reaching for Daniel's face with curious hands. Papa. She said it tentatively one morning, looking at Daniel with those big blue eyes. Daniel froze. Did she just? She did. Charlotte covered her mouth, tears spilling down her cheeks. Papa? Grace said it again, more confidently this time. Then she looked at Caleb. Papa. Both men exchanged a glance, and something passed between them. An understanding, an acceptance. That's right, Mija. Daniel lifted her into his arms. You've got 2 papas now, and we both love you more than anything in the world. Grace babbled happily, seemingly pleased with this arrangement. Then she reached toward Ellie and Charlotte. Mama, Mama. Charlotte laughed through her tears. 2 mamas and 2 papas. She's going to be the most loved little girl in all of Texas. She already is. Ellie put her arm around Charlotte. She already is. The wedding took place on a cold, clear Sunday in February. The whole town turned out not just to witness Caleb and Ellie's union, but to celebrate everything they'd survived. Sheriff Turner served as best man. Dr. Whitfield gave Ellie away. Rosa sat in the front row, dabbing her eyes with a handkerchief. And Grace, dressed in a white dress that Charlotte had sewn herself, served as the world's smallest flower girl. She toddled down the aisle with a basket of dried flowers, stopping every few steps to show them to people in the pews. The congregation laughed and clapped, completely charmed. She's a natural, Caleb whispered to Ellie as they stood at the altar. She gets that from you. Ellie's eyes sparkled. The ability to win over a room without even trying. I think that's all her. The preacher cleared his throat. Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today. Caleb barely heard the words. He was too busy looking at Ellie, at the woman who had brought him back to life. She was beautiful in her simple dress, her auburn hair pinned up with wildflowers. But it wasn't her beauty that made his heart race. It was her strength, her kindness, the way she loved fiercely and forgave freely. Caleb! The preacher's voice cut through his thoughts. "Do you take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife?" "I do." The words came out strong and sure. "I do." "And do you, Eleanor, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband?" Ellie looked at Caleb with eyes full of love. "I do. With all my heart." "Then by the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife." The preacher smiled. "You may kiss the bride." Caleb pulled Ellie close and kissed her a kiss that held 8 years of loneliness, 3 weeks of hope, and a lifetime of promise. The congregation erupted in cheers. Grace, not wanting to be left out, tugged at Caleb's pants leg. He bent down and scooped her up, holding her between himself and Ellie. "We did it, little one." His voice was thick with emotion. "We're a family now. Official." Grace patted both their faces and said the word that made everyone laugh and cry at the same time. Home. The reception was held at the church hall. People brought food and music, and more goodwill than Caleb had ever experienced. Old-timers who'd known him for years clapped him on the back and told him they'd always known he'd find happiness again. Women who'd once whispered about Ellie now hugged her and wished her well. "It's amazing." Ellie leaned against Caleb, watching the celebration. "A month ago, half these people thought we were scandalous. Now they're acting like they were on our side all along." "People are complicated," Caleb shrugged. "They follow the crowd. When the crowd turned against Prescott, they turned too." "That's a cynical way to look at it." "Maybe, but I prefer to think they just needed permission to be good. Prescott had them scared for so long they forgot how to stand up for what's right. And now they remember." Caleb pulled her closer. "That's something, isn't it?" Charlotte and Daniel danced in the corner, Grace between them. The baby laughed and clapped as they spun her around, her joy infectious. "They look happy." Ellie smiled. "Really, truly happy. They've got a second chance. Not everyone gets one of those." "We did." "Yes." Caleb looked at his wife, and felt his heart swell. "We did." Later that evening, after the celebration had wound down, and Grace had been put to bed, the 4 adults sat together around the fire in Dr. Whitfield's office. It had become their gathering place over the past weeks, the site of so much drama and healing. "What happens now?" Charlotte asked. She was curled against Daniel, her head on his chest. "We live," Ellie said simply. "We raise Grace. We build a life. Where this town holds so many bad memories for me. Then we make new ones." Caleb leaned forward. "I've got some money saved, enough for a small piece of land. We could build a homestead, room for all of us." "All of us." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "You want us to live together?" "Why not? Grace has 4 parents who love her. Seems foolish to split that up." Charlotte and Daniel exchanged a look. "We don't want to impose." "It's not imposing," Ellie cut in. "It's family, and family sticks together." "But don't you want privacy? You just got married." "Privacy is overrated." Caleb grinned. "Besides, have you seen how much that little girl eats? We're going to need all hands on deck." Charlotte laughed a real laugh, the first one any of them had heard from her since learning about Daniel's supposed death. "Are you sure?" "Never been more sure of anything." Ellie reached across and took her hand. "We've been through too much to split up now. And Grace, she needs all of us. Her 2 mamas, her 2 papas. Her whole crazy, wonderful family." Tears glistened in Charlotte's eyes. "I don't know what we did to deserve you." "You survived." Caleb's voice was soft. "You fought for your daughter. You had the courage to stand up to your father. That's more than most people manage in a lifetime." Daniel cleared his throat. "There's something I should tell you. All of you." "What is it?" "The rancher who saved my life, Francisco. He passed away last month, his wife too not long after." Daniel paused. "He left me his land, 100 acres in New Mexico, good soil, plenty of water. He said, He said I was like the son he never had. The room went silent. Daniel, that's wonderful. Charlotte gripped his arm. Why didn't you tell me? Because I wanted to give you a choice. He looked at Caleb and Ellie. 100 acres is enough for 2 families. More than enough. But it would mean leaving Silver Creek, starting over somewhere new. Caleb looked at Ellie. She looked back at him. An entire conversation passed between them in the space of a heartbeat. When do we leave? Ellie asked. Daniel's face broke into a smile. You mean it? You'd really come with us? Try and stop us. Caleb stood and extended his hand. We're family now, Daniel. Where you go, we go. Daniel shook his hand, then pulled him into a fierce hug. Thank you. Thank you for everything. They left Silver Creek on a bright March morning, the winter finally loosening its grip on the land. The whole town came out to see them off. Sheriff Turner, Dr. Whitfield, Rosa, even Martha Dawson, who pressed a basket of fresh bread into Ellie's hands. You take care of that baby. Martha's eyes were suspiciously bright. She's special, that one. We will. Ellie hugged her. Thank you for everything. The journey took 2 weeks. 2 weeks of bumpy roads, cold nights, and Grace's endless energy. She'd learned to walk confidently now and wanted to explore everything. Keeping her contained in the wagon was a full-time job. She's going to be a handful when she's older. Caleb remarked, chasing her across a meadow for the 3rd time that day. She's a handful now. Daniel laughed. But I wouldn't have it any other way. They reached Francisco's land. Their land now on a warm afternoon in late March. The cabin was small but sturdy, with room to expand. The field stretched out in every direction, full of possibility. It's beautiful, Charlotte breathed. Daniel, it's perfect. It's home. He put his arm around her. Our home. Grace wiggled to be put down, then toddled toward the cabin with determination. She stopped at the door and turned back to look at the adults, her face expectant. Well? She seemed to say. Are you coming? They followed her inside, 4 people bound not by blood, but by something stronger. By love, by choice. By the unbreakable bonds forged in the hardest of times. The first year was difficult. They cleared land, planted crops, built additions to the cabin. There were setbacks, a late frost that killed their first planting, a summer drought that nearly ruined them, a winter so harsh they huddled together around the fire for warmth. But through it all, they had each other. Grace grew from a toddler into a bright, curious child. She had Charlotte's golden hair and Daniel's dark eyes, but her spirit was all her own, fierce and loving and absolutely fearless. Mama Ellie watch. She'd climb the highest tree jump, from the tallest rock ride the most spirited horse. Be careful. Ellie's heart would stop every time. I'm always careful. Grace would grin. Papa Caleb taught me. Don't blame me. Caleb would protest, hiding his own smile. She called them all by name now, Mama Ellie and Mama Charlotte, Papa Caleb and Papa Daniel. 4 parents who loved her unconditionally, who would move heaven and earth to keep her safe. Do you ever wish? Charlotte asked Ellie one evening as they watched Grace playing with Daniel and Caleb in the field. Do you ever wish she was just yours, that you didn't have to share her? Ellie considered the question carefully. No, I used to think love was finite, that the more people you gave it to, the less there was for each one. But Grace taught me that's not true. Love multiplies. The more you give, the more there is. She's lucky to have so many people who love her. We're all lucky. Ellie squeezed Charlotte's hand. Every single one of us. On Grace's 5th birthday, they threw her a party. Neighbors from surrounding homesteads came. They'd built a community here. Other families drawn by the promise of good land and fresh starts. Grace ran from group to group, laughing and chattering, completely at ease with everyone. But when it came time to blow out her candles, she insisted on having all 4 parents around her. Make a wish, Daniel prompted. Grace closed her eyes tight, her face scrunched in concentration. Then she opened them and blew with all her might. Every candle went out. "What did you wish for?" Charlotte asked. Grace shook her head solemnly. "Can't tell. It won't come true." "She's right." Caleb ruffled her hair. "Some things are too important to share." Later, after the guests had gone and Grace was tucked into bed, Ellie found her sitting by the window, looking at the stars. "Can't sleep." "I was thinking." Grace's voice was unusually serious for a 5-year-old. "About what?" "About my story. Mama Charlotte told me again. About how I was found in the creek. How Papa Caleb saved me. How you all fought to keep me." Ellie sat down beside her. "Does it scare you? Knowing what happened?" "No." Grace shook her head. "It makes me feel special. Like I was worth fighting for." "You were. You are." Ellie pulled her close. "More than you'll ever know." "Mama Ellie." "Yes, sweetheart. I remembered what I wished for." "You did." Grace nodded. "I wished that everyone could feel as loved as I do, that all the sad people and the lonely people could find a family like mine." She looked up with those big blue eyes. "Is that a good wish?" Ellie felt tears sliding down her cheeks. "That's the best wish I've ever heard." "Do you think it'll come true?" "I think—" Ellie kissed her forehead. "I think you're going to spend your whole life making it come true, one person at a time." Grace smiled, satisfied. "Good. Can you tell me a story now? The one about how you and Papa Caleb met." Ellie settled Grace in her lap and began the familiar tale. Once upon a time, there was a brave cowboy who heard a tiny voice calling for help by the creek. Grace fell asleep before the story was finished, as she always did. But Ellie kept talking anyway, the words a prayer of gratitude for everything they'd been given. She carried Grace to bed and found Caleb waiting for her in their room. Even after 5 years, his presence still made her heart skip. She asleep. Finally. Ellie crawled into bed beside him. She asked me to tell her the story again. She never gets tired of that story. "Would you?" Caleb smiled. "No, I suppose not." They lay together in comfortable silence, listening to the sounds of the night. In the next room they could hear Daniel snoring softly, Charlotte murmuring something in her sleep. In the small addition they'd built for Grace, their daughter dreamed peaceful dreams. Caleb. Thank you." "For what?" "For finding her. For not giving up. For—" Ellie's voice caught. "For giving me a reason to live again." Caleb pulled her close. "You gave me the same thing. We saved each other, Ellie. All of us. We saved each other." Outside, the stars wheeled overhead, the same stars that had watched over Grace on that terrible night in the creek. The same stars that had guided Daniel through the desert. The same stars that would watch over this family for generations to come. Because that's what they were now. A family. Not perfect, not conventional, but real. Forged in fire and ice, tested by betrayal and loss, held together by love that refused to quit. Grace would grow up knowing her story. All of it, the darkness and the light, the fear and the hope, the enemies who tried to destroy her, and the family who refused to let them win. She would carry that story with her, always a reminder that love is stronger than hate, that hope can survive the coldest night, that family is not about blood, but about choice. And one day, many years in the future, she would sit by another bedside with children of her own and tell them the tale of how she came to be. Once upon a time, she would begin, there was a baby who was left to die in a frozen creek. But a brave cowboy heard her crying, and he refused to let her go. He pulled her from this water, held her close, and whispered words that changed everything. "What words, Mama?" her children would ask. And Grace would smile, remembering the story that had been told to her 1,000 times, the story that had shaped her life and made her who she was. He said, "Hold on, little one, you hold on." And she did. Against all odds, against all reason, she held on. Because somewhere deep inside, even at 9 months old, she knew the truth that would guide the rest of her life. What truth, Mama? That love always finds a way. That family isn't about blood, it's about the people who show up. The people who fight for you. The people who refuse to give up no matter how dark things get. Grace would kiss her children goodnight and walk to the window, looking out at the same stars her parents had watched over her. And she would feel them there, Caleb and Ellie Charlotte, and Daniel watching over her still. Loving her still. Forever and always. Because that's what family does. They never let go. And as Grace stood there, surrounded by the life she'd built and the love she'd inherited, she knew one thing with absolute certainty. She had been worth fighting for. They all had. And that was the truest story of all.